For this episode of Transformers Lore, I gave you all a choice. A sort of biography of a character from the IDW universe, or at least the first IDW universe. I was curious to see what you guys would want to see. And, you guys picked Devastator. A dude who's barely even a character. But, alright. But regardless, let me tell you the story of Devastator from the IDW universe. A bit different than Devastator's in other universe in the fact that, while Devastator is one personality, the people who make him up change every now and then. So let's be clear that the history of Devastator in the IDW universe is not the history of the Constructicons as a group, and it is not the history of the Constructicons as individuals, because they kind of do their own thing in the IDW universe. Devastator is the combiner, the personality that comes out of the combination of what initially was the Constructicons, but eventually became a whole hodgepodge of people. First, we should probably talk about the importance of combiners in the IDW universe. For a time, the combiners were sort of treated like nuclear bombs, where no side had them, but everyone was like in a rush to try to find out who can build a combiner first, because they knew that if you had a combiner, you pretty much would win the war, because combiners initially were very OP in the IDW universe. In the far back history of Cybertron, there was the scientist Geoxys, who managed to create Monstructor, an imperfect combiner, who was sort of like, kill me type combination. Monstructor was viewed as an abomination and was locked away into an intra-dimensional prison. But that was the first combiner built with technology from Geoxys. So, that happened. When the Autobot-Decepticon War breaks out, the Autobots and Decepticons are like, hey, combiners are a thing that can exist if we're desperate enough. We're kind of desperate enough, so they're in a race to see who can build the first combiner. The Decepticons get a bit of an upper hand in this field because they have Shockwave, a former student of Geoxys who has a good amount of technological know-how to do a lot of Geoxys' experiments. Megatron comes up to Shockwave and says, I know you are a student of Geoxys, join us, help us build a combiner. And as a gift to Shockwave, and watch my Transformers Lore Shadow Play episode to understand where this picks off from. But as an offering to Shockwave, he gives him a choice of some hands, because his hands were replaced with claws after he went through Impurata and Shadow Play back in Shadow Play. Shockwave agrees to help build a combiner for the Decepticons. There's this cool moment where he accepts one of the hands, but he replaces the other hand with a gun, because since a war is coming, he'll need that one more. Shockwave does a lot of work on creating a combiner, particularly through a group of Decepticons known as the Constructicons. Shockwave finds that the Constructicons are sort of jerks. They sort of have what they call unified mind for destruction. They all love destroying stuff. They very much have their one personality in the IDW universe. The individual Constructicons aren't really that developed as characters. But Shockwave knows that one of the weaknesses of a combiner is that once you combine, if your minds aren't all in sync, you're going to have a bad time. So he discovered the Constructicons, who had a unified person, had a very similar minds, very similar personalities, very similar wants, and said, alright, I'll stick you guys together. Now, if you watch my Transformers Lore video on Spotlight Shockwave, you know Shockwave goes missing during the Ice Age. So the research on combination technology in the Decepticon Empire kind of stalls for a few thousand years, until ultimately the Insecticon bombshell is created during the Surge. The Surge was the Decepticon super offensive that happened in 2008? I think it happened in 2008. But during this major Decepticon push that almost resulted in the Decepticons taking over the universe, Bombshell was created as part of a Decepticon science experiment, along with Kickback and Shrapnel. Now, Bombshell was really good with technology, and was sort of seen as kind of what could be Shockwave's successor. Bombshell was in charge of the combiner technology. He was in charge of figuring that out, and Bombshell eventually perfected the technology to create Devastator. So using originally G-Axis technology that was worked on by Shockwave, and then Bombshell wrapped it up. So Bombshell completes the Devastator project. The Constructicons are able to turn into Devastator. What happens next? Well, the Decepticons use Devastator sort of as the atomic bomb for the Decepticon Empire. They use Devastator as the major weapon that pretty much defeated Optimus Prime and his Autobot forces under his direct command on Earth. It's a complicated chain of events, but ultimately the Autobots are caught unawares, drawn into a trap by the Decepticons, and Devastator is unleashed. And with Devastator, the Autobots are pretty much completely defeated. And then they're banished off on Cybertron, while the Decepticons have free reign on Earth. So we've mentioned the Decepticon occupation of Earth before. There's that Transformers lore video for that. Devastator played a big role in taking over Earth. Most notably, the Decepticon attack on Earth to occupy the planet started in New York City, and that was started off by the Constructicons. Eventually, Devastator is deployed. It's recorded by Laserbeak and broadcast across the world of Devastator combining and Devastator going into the waters of New York City and destroying the tunnels. The combination of Devastator coming together on that film was a crippling blow to humanity's morale, and was probably one of the decisive factors in how the humans eventually stopped putting up a major resistance. Footage of Devastator destroying the tunnels is something that reoccurs during the IDW universe. It's one of those, in-universe, one of the most famous broadcast events in human history. As the Decepticon occupation of Earth came to a close in, I think, about 2009, Starscream eventually leads a coup against Megatron, or a coup attempt, I should say, and during that he manages to recruit the Constructicons. So when Starscream makes his coup attempt, the Constructicons combine into Devastator and join the fight against Megatron. Megatron single-handedly fights Devastator and pretty much holds his own. Devastator beat Optimus Prime, couldn't beat Megatron. But Devastator, the coup attempt was interrupted when the European Union launched an attack on New York City to try to drive the Decepticons out, and that sort of distracted Devastator. There's a nice 2-page spread of Devastator fighting European Union jets. And it's around that same time that Optimus Prime's Autobot forces returned to Earth, and Omega Supreme came with them. And Omega Supreme shot a hole through Devastator right up against the Statue of Liberty. Don't worry, all the Constructicons survive that. But that is the last time Devastator combines for a long while. I believe the next time he combines is 2011? However, one key point to mention is the death of Scrapper. Scrapper, the Constructicon leader, gets killed by Spike Witwicky, one of the officers in the United Nations anti-Cybertronian organization known as Skywatch. Spike makes a point to say that humans aren't necessarily inferior to Cybertronians, as he manages to take out Scrapper by only using equipment that could be found in your everyday average American kitchen, with like some acids and stuff. And then finally, I believe he uses his own pistol against him and shoots Scrapper in the head. The Constructicons have a big grudge against Spike Witwicky after that. But the next time Devastator combines is during the Chaos event. Big war going down on Cybertron. In fact, it's the last proper battle of the Cybertronian War, where Galvatron is attempting to essentially create the end of the universe. Devastator joins the battle after crossing through a space bridge in Megatron, where the Constructicons come in through a space bridge that was installed in Megatron to support Megatron in the battle on Cybertron. But they bring the dead body of Scrapper and combine into Devastator to terrorize the Autobots. The Decepticon forces at this stage of the battle don't really realize that Galvatron is the threat, and they turn against the Autobots, but whatever. So they do combine with a dead Scrapper, which results in Devastator walking with a limp. But ultimately he's confronted by Sunstreaker, who's in a wheelchair after events. We don't need to go into detail of the entire IDW universe. Sunstreaker has some explosives on the chair, and when Devastator tries to stomp on it, it explodes, defeating Devastator. Although Devastator is caught up in the Decepticon, which is the nickname, it's not an official name, for one of the combined forces from the D-Void. Long story. That can be its own separate video. Now, after the Chaos event, the D-Void is defeated, Galvatron is defeated, and the Constructicons are separate again, and the Autobot-Decepticon war is over. So if the war's over, no need for the nuclear bomb analogy of Devastator, right? Megatron has other plans. See, Megatron is lost after the Chaos event, nobody can find where he is, but the energy of the D-Void, which is sort of a combinational energy, is still left out in the wilds of Cybertron. Megatron discovers this and decides to continue working on the combiner process, even though Devastator is already complete. Megatron finds that using the D-Void and his Or-13 and a long combination of Deus Ex Machinas, that this combination technique can allow one person to subjugate everyone else in the combiner. So in Megatron's view, this is a more perfect combination process. Megatron will eventually change his body along with the body of the Constructicons to be more modular so that anyone can be Devastator pretty much. But Megatron wants to be sort of as the head of Devastator, but first he wants to use Prowl for a little bit. Because Megatron doesn't want to use himself as the test run for this combination process, he has Bombshell launch a Cerebro Shell into Prowl and uses Prowl as the next step in combination for Devastator. When Megatron launches his attack on Cybertron, on Iacon I should say, Prowl is sort of manipulated by Bombshell through the Cerebro Shell, and Prowl combines with the other 5 Constructicons to form Devastator, or as I've seen him nicknamed, Prowvastator. Now, during Devastator's attack on Iacon, he is countered by Superion, which is a combination of the aerial bots, an Autobot team, that was created by Megatron as a test run through this combination process, but the aerial bots are still Autobots. They intervene on the side of the Autobots, and Superion counters Devastator. That being said, Devastator tore Superion in half. Now, Ironhide eventually gets Prowl to snap out of it, and, get rid of the programming by Bombshell, and Prowl discombines Devastator, ending this little combination of Devastator, this incident. You have to understand that Devastator combining is like an event in the IDW universe. It's not just like, oh, the Decepticons are ready for battle, let's quickly get Devastator together. Devastator's a big deal, so every time he combines, it's like an event, until later on in the IDW universe when they just stop caring. Megatron attempts to combine with Constructicons again to reform Devastator during the last phase of the battle, but the Autobots activate this force field around him that pretty much lobotomizes him temporarily and prevents him from combining with the Constructicons. Now, even though Prowl was manipulated by the Cerebro Shell and the energies of the D-Void, Prowl still is a jerk, despite being Autobot's second in command, and the Constructicons, when you're combined, they could see each other's minds. The Constructicons see Prowl's true personality and his true thoughts, and the Constructicons are like, hey, this Prowl dude's pretty messed up. I like him. So from that point on, the Constructicons kind of follow around Prowl like a fanboy. Prowl is initially disgusted by the fact that these violent Constructicons are see so much of themselves in him, and he's like, stay away from me, initially. However, during the Dark Cybertron event, when Shockwave attempts to end the universe, a lot of times where people just try to end the universe, Shockwave attempts to end the universe, and he's partnered with a lot of different allies from his past, including G-Axis and Monstructor, who is free. Monstructor is used as part of Shockwave's forces, and Prowl combines with the Constructicons again to make a Devastator, and counters Monstructor, the sort of successor. Devastator was sort of the successor to Monstructor, and now Devastator's fighting Monstructor. But after defeating Monstructor, Prowl kind of looks at Devastator as a tool that can be useful. He stops being so disgusted at the idea of working alongside the Constructicons, and from this point on, he pretty much has the Constructicons reporting to him. When Optimus Prime leads a group of Autobots to Earth to follow Galvatron, who's back on Earth, he brings the Constructicons with him. In the town of Poverty Flat, the Autobots face off against Galvatron's Decepticons and Devastators combined once more against the orders of Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime did not realize Prowl was just going to combine with the Constructicons and form Devastator in this small American town. And keep in mind, humans associate the image of Devastator with the occupation of Earth because of that footage that was spread around. And now they're supposed to believe that the Autobots, who are the good guys, just happen to have Devastator with them. It also doesn't help that at this point Megatron's an Autobot. So when the humans associate here's how it's like from the human point of view. You get invaded by the Decepticons under the command of Megatron, with Devastator serving as their largest weapon. Then the Cybertronians leave, and then they come back, Autobots and Decepticons, and the Decepticons are some people you don't know, but on the Autobot side is Devastator and Megatron. So it leads to some diplomatic issues between the humans and Cybertronians. Or Autobots, I should say. Despite Optimus Prime not being cool with Devastator, Prowl combines with Devastator again during a battle on the Bikini Atoll against Galvatron's forces, and I think he crashes Galvatron's ship, which is like a World Sweeper class ship, which is impressive. Eventually, the Autobots learn that the Enigma of Combination, a tool that was used by Nexus Prime back during the day of IDW's 13, is on Earth, a magical tool that can pretty much create combiners. Prowl is interested in obtaining that, and he partners with Spike Witwicky to try to figure out where the Enigma of Combination is. It's held in a facility called Onyx, which is like an IDW version of Apple. And so, to storm the Onyx facility to get the Enigma of Combination, Prowl combines into Devastator. The thing is, once he combines with Devastator, Devastator looks at Spike Witwicky and remembers him killing Scrapper. So Devastator goes berserk, the operation fails. Scoop, a sort of assistant to Starscream, who at this point is the leader of Cybertron, Scoop, Starscream's secret agent, goes in, takes the Enigma of Combination, and flees to Cybertron to deliver the Enigma of Combination to Starscream. So later on, Starscream, as the head of state of Cybertron, is creating a Council of Worlds. Around this point in time, Cybertron's making contact with its colonies again, and Starscream's creating this sort of federal state with these different colonies. Prowl sees this, and he believes this is a ploy for power for Starscream, that Starscream's just going to expand and take over these colonies. He refuses to let Starscream take power, and what he does is he combines with Devastator and launches an attack. This attack fails because Starscream already has the support of other combiners, especially since he has the Enigma of Combination. Superion's on Starscream's side, and Starscream just kind of sees the Protectobots, who just happen to be there, uses the Enigma of Combination, and creates Defensor to fight off Devastator. Ultimately, Devastator's forced to discombine, and they're put into prison as, terrorists against the state. However, Starscream still has plans for Devastator, which is still a powerful weapon. What he does is he gets Scoop, his secret agent I mentioned before, who's very loyal to Starscream. Scoop kind of sees Starscream as a religious figure, for a whole lot of reasons. Starscream uses the Enigma of Combination and refits Scoop to serve as a part of Devastator. So now the Constructicons don't need Prowl, they have Scoop, who is amazingly loyal to Starscream, therefore making Devastator someone who can be controlled by Starscream. When a rogue combiner by the name of Menasor launches an attack on the Council of Worlds and their space bridges, Starscream utilizes Devastator, now under Scoop's control, to fight off Menasor. And this fight turns into a multi-combiner brawl as more and more combiners are dragged in, and ultimately it's like a multi-way fight between Menasor, Devastator, Defensor, and Superion, and they keep falling through space bridges, so they keep landing in different colonies, sometimes discovering completely new colonies they didn't expect to discover. Optimus Prime eventually steps in, combines with some Autobots as Optimus Maximus, and ultimately defeats the combiners. The Constructicons are forced to fall back apart. And ultimately, Devastator is arrested by Starscream again. And that sort of set of incidents where all these combiners are at each other's throats is known as the Combiner War. Devastator, even though he's arrested, the Combiner War leads many Cybertronians, especially Optimus Prime, who became a combiner, to understand the psychology of a combiner more and understand that combiners need to combine every now and then. So under the watchful eye of Superion, Devastator's allowed to combine every now and then. you can kind of tell this is when IDW is starting to not care about how they treat combiners, about how it's inconsistent with how they've been treated before. It should be noted that Devastator seemed apologetic for his actions in the Combiner War. From that point on, Devastator, who was previously characterized as like an analogy to the atom bomb, just becomes used for like riot control. There's a riot at a space bridge during one of Galvatron's insurrections, and Starscream just calls in Devastator to keep the peace at the space bridge. Devastator's used when a bunch of Titans attack Cybertron later on. Now this I kind of understand because multiple Titans attacking Cybertron is a big deal. You kind of want to use the nuclear bomb option of Devastator, so Devastator plays a small role in defending Cybertron from the Titan invasion. When the Titan Trypticon launches his own attack, or not necessarily his own attack, but an attack led by Bludgeon, when Bludgeon influences Trypticon to attack Iacon, Starscream deploys Devastator again. Devastator is completely defeated by Trypticon. It's barely even a fight. When the evil Onyx Prime launched an attack on Cybertron, see at this stage, it's just so-and-so launches an attack on Cybertron. Period of doing nothing. Then so-and-so launches an attack on Cybertron, and then another period of doing nothing. That's sort of what the IDW universe turned into. But when Onyx Prime, who was later revealed to be Shockwave, because of course, why wouldn't he be? When Onyx Prime / Shockwave launches an attack on Cybertron, Scoop and the Constructicons launch an operation to rescue Starscream, because at this point Starscream has been overthrown by Windblade, who took over Cybertron. So Starscream, who is viewed by Scoop to be the savior of Cybertron, is rescued, and then the Devastator forms again, and Devastator joins the fight. Devastator serves Starscream during the battle until he's ultimately vaporized by the combiner from Caminus, Victorion, with Devastator's final words being Starscream. And that's the history of Devastator in the IDW universe, from a simple idea in the head of Shockwave as he puts together the Constructicons to being vaporized by Victorion. From being viewed as like a big deal, like a nuclear bomb, to just sort of becoming a list of he combines here, he combines here, he combines here, doesn't really play a big role in any of the battles he combines in. I'll be honest, I'm confused why you guys picked Devastator out of all the options to choose from, but there you go. But that's going to wrap up this episode of Transformers Lore. I hope you enjoyed. Check out other videos on my channel. Subscribe to this channel if you have not yet. Follow me on social media. All the links are in the description. Join my Discord server is also down there. And yeah, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.